All right, what I'd like to do here is to give you an idea of what I do when I have my Thursday, Friday appointments with students from my two classes. And for the teacher assistant, we will have you do 5 students. Now, what I will send to you will be something like this, which is a class roster with some blank places here where you can record the notebook grades and the essay questions. And you'll have the list of those students you'll be viewing that particular week. Now, when I ask for a notebook check, and I usually have this little sign back here, we're going to be checking this coming week 3.3, and I actually gave you access to the notes of this. But what I have the students do is they hold up their notebook, and there is 3.3. I ask them to highlight the title of it, and then as they do examples, write the example number, and then of course show the work. And then as we page through it, this is what I'm looking for. And this, I think, is pretty good. I did it myself. And I use this for their open notes quiz. So the quiz questions that I ask them during our open notes quizzes come right from this. So there is topic 3.6. And if it's something like this, and I can make comments to students, then we go on to 1.4 later. But right now, it's only 3.3 and 3.6. Now, they don't have to be quite this good, although you'll find some that are even better, to get a 5. But that would be one of the notebooks. Then the other notebook that we check is something we do in class. I'm calling this the Classwork Notebook. And during our Zoom lessons, and this is what we're going to use, by the way, to have the quiz questions, or I should say the oral essay questions that we ask, and I'll illustrate that here for you shortly too. Now, most students have this done because we do this as part of class, but it's just a quick check that they've written things out and have something like that. And that would be parallel to what we did in the flipped classroom notebook, topics 3.3 and 3.6. And again, it's a 5 for this and a 5 for that. Now, in one of our Zoom lessons, I went over this with the students, and they should have it pretty much filled in. And what I'm going to do is give you some things that I do, and of course you might do it differently. And for instance, I have these little whiteboards, but you can have just a piece of paper that I hold up, and the question I will ask the student, which is part of our 3 essay questions, and you just make up 3 questions from that chart, that formula sheet. And one question might be, what is the name of this top formula here? And the answer would be point slope. Okay, and then the other part of the question is, well, what is then the slope of this equation? And that's what we would want here. And the slope, of course, is 1/2. Now, what is the ordered pair this point here? Well, the ordered pair for the x would be a -2, and for the y, a +3. And that would be an example of a question. And if they got part of it right, they would get 1 point. And since there's 3 questions, it's 6 points, but the max that they can get is 5, so they can get part wrong and still get the 5. Another one that you might ask, and I had these prepared ahead of time, is what is the form that this top equation is in? And that would be standard form. And if I solve for y, what would be the slope of this second line here? And the slope would be a -2/3. Now, if an equation is to be parallel to this, what slope would that equation have? And it would be -2/3. Now, how about if we wanted a line that would be perpendicular to it? That would be this one over here. And the answer to that would be the opposite sign reciprocal, which would be 3/2. Okay, those were some questions. And then I'll give some others as we change modes and look at them. Now, for this next part, here is what I will be sending you with all the answers, making up questions on part of these. One of the questions would be, as a suggestion, if we look at part 5 here, and you wouldn't tell the students this is something you would have for your own mental reference. What is the general formula for a horizontal line? And that would be y equals b. A question might be, what is the slope of a horizontal line? And the answer would be 0. Now they should have all of these. Going on to something else, or another kind of question, is what would be the equation, standard form, of a vertical line? And that would be x equals a. And what would be the slope of every vertical line? Well, this is undefined. And then again, you're only going to ask 3 questions, and you can kind of spread them out. And there are times when I say, well, I'll give you another chance, and you want them to try to get a good score. All right, let's say if we were going to have an equation in slope-intercept, as we see here in this last example on the right, what's the first thing you do if you have an equation in slope-intercept to graph it? And the first thing is to plot the y-intercept. And then you might hold up and say, what is the y-intercept in this example? And if they say -2, that's the answer. So you would plot the -2. Now, what is the slope of this? Well, the slope is 1/3. How would you then go about plotting it? Well, since it's positive, you might, and there'd be a number of ways to do this. I suggest they go from the y-intercept, since it's positive, the run of 3, and then the rise of 1. So again, we're looking for whether the students have an understanding of what's on this chart and making up various questions. Okay, I think I've covered everything I'd like you to cover. And of course, you're recording this, And then in the last part of that period, you can Zoom me, and then I will get those grades of the students that you were working with. And hoping we're going to give you 10-minute blocks. You may not use the whole 10 minutes, but again, getting acquainted with the students and then seeing if they have questions and then any concerns, and you can pass this on to me in a general way. It doesn't have to be a specific student asks this. Okay, we'll wrap this up.